Hello everyone, I am Fuad Alavi and I'm super excited to start this clean architecture tutorial with you. As I explained in the previous session, it is what we see about clean architecture. We have one clean architecture diagram on the left hand side and another one on the right hand side. The right hand side is what Uncle Bob explained in his book, and the left hand side is the simplified version of this clean architecture diagram. We are going to stick to the left diagram and implement our code based on it, and after that gradually migrate our code in a way that it respects what Uncle Bob likes about clean architecture. Okay, the project that we are going to develop together in this tutorial is about managing a library. I'm going to call it librarian, and we have some members, some books, and members can borrow some books and return them. And admins of the library, the real librarian, should be able to manage users and books. Let's start with the project structure. When we are talking about architecture, architecture is about how we place files and the folder structure and the infrastructure together. Then we need to be sure that we are placing all our projects correctly in some specific structure. Let's start with creating one blank solution. Let me correct the address. I'm going to call this solution librarian. I have it ready here, as you can see. And now I need to create some projects. As I mentioned, we have core, infrastructure, and API. Let's start with creating those folders first. First, a solution folder for API, and then another one for my core, and finally, another one for infrastructure. Now it is time to create our project. Let's start with the API. I need to create one web API project here. ASP.NET Core Web API, it is what I want, and it is going to place it in my structure, but I want it to be placed physically in the API folder. Then I will add the API here, and let's call it librarian.api. Yes, let's configure it with HTTPS. I hate top level statement. Then I'm ticking this checkbox to do not use it. And I'm not going to make it Docker enabled. In this video series, I'm not going to talk about microservices. We are going to have some other series about microservices, and then you will understand how to use Docker and Kubernetes for having microservices. Let's create it. It may take some time, and now it is time to create my core project. The rest of the projects should be class libraries. I'm going to create a class library, and I'm going to place it in the core physical folder, and I'm going to call it librarian.domain. Domain is the heart of my application. I'm going to place all my entities. I'm going to place all my domain models there, and then based on that, we are going to create the rest of the application. Let's have it .NET 8 support. It is exactly what I want. Let's get rid of this class, and I need to create another project, another class library. Let's call it application, and place it physically in the core folder. Fine, and let's get rid of this one. Oops, I did a mistake. The project name should be librarian.application. Let's press F2 here and just replace application with librarian.application. During this series, you will see that I'm making some mistakes. Some of them are intentionally and some of them are unintentionally, because I want to teach you how to write code. I'm going to think out loud about any of the decisions that I'm making, because I want to give you the mindset about how to create projects using clean architecture. Okay, now I have this librarian.application. It is time to create the infrastructure project. Let's start by adding another class library Let's call it librarian.infrastructure, and I like to place it in a physical folder called infrastructure. Next. Yes, it is what I want. And we may need another infrastructure project for be in contact with my database. Let's call it persistence and place it in the infrastructure. Fine. Let's check the Windows Explorer and see how it is in reality. It is the structure that I like. I have librarian solution, I have infrastructure, core, and API. In any of these folders, I have some projects. Can you remember I told you we are going to wrap this project in some folders, physical folders, or maybe logical folders? It is exactly what I want to do in this training. Let's start by designing the heart of the application. Here I need to create one class. The shortcut for creating the class here in Visual Studio is Ctrl-Shift-A. You can find it by going to Tools, Option, and then just search for hotkey or shortkey. Yeah, environment.keyboard. If I click on it and search for new item, you can see that for projects, add new item, the short key, which is a global short key, is Ctrl-Shift-A, and we are going to create a lot of folders. Then you need to have a short key for creating folders. New folder, project.new folder. What I use is Ctrl-Shift-Alt-F for creating new folders. Let's create one domain or one entity, call it member. Members are people who are going to enroll in our library, people who are going to borrow some books. Then what kind of properties do we need? First, we need to make this class a public class, and then we need to have a string first name, and then a string last name. Visual Studio is going to help me with it. Yes, I want to initialize the data with a string.empty. I need to have emails. Yes, it is a nice suggestion. I need to have the phone number. It is exactly what I want. I need to have, instead of address, let's stick to the just postal code. And I need to have the date of birth, prop date time, the date of birth. Okay, fine. And let's make them all empty at the time of instantiating the classes. I'm going to get rid of all the unnecessary usings. It is the member class or member entity that I want. Be careful. When I'm talking about entity, the class should have one identifier. The class should have one ID. Let's create it. Let's create properties, int and ID. And on top of that, I need to have some other information, like, for example, the date that I created this member, the date that this member registered, the last time that this member modified itself, or maybe I want to know who exactly modified this member and who created this one. For all entities, we need to have some administrative information like that. The guy who created that, the guy who changed that, the last time that the entity gets modified, and the time that the entity gets created. Let's have some informations like that. Creation date, created by, modification date, and modified by. Let me put this ID here as well. You will understand why I'm doing it like that. Let's create another class. The next thing that we want to have is book. Okay, what is a library without members and books? Public, and then we need to have property, string, title of the book. Fine. We need to have a short description. Yeah, good suggestion from Visual Studio. We need to have an author. Good. And then maybe publish date. And what else do I need? I need to know exactly how many of these books do I have inside my library. This is not the best way to do that, but for the sake of simplicity, let's have one property called QTY. It is fine. And for the authors, it might be nice to create another entity for authors. Let's do it like that. Author. And it should be a class. Let's generate the author class here. I want it to be generated here for me. Okay, fine. I need to have an ID. I need to have a string name, or maybe first name, and then a string last name. I guess it is all I want for authors. Can you remember that I told you we need some administrative fields as well? Let me go back to members, copy them all, and paste them here. Let's paste them here. Yeah. And here as well. You may see that I'm using copy paste. I'm using a lot of short keys because I'm lazy. And if you want to be a developer, if you want to create values, you need to be lazy as well. Good. Let's move this class to a file, move type to author.cs. Yes, it is what I want. And as you can see, for all entities, I have these 5 fields or properties. Let's extract it to a base class. Let me say I want to extract created by, creation day, ID, modification date, and modified by to a base class. Let's call it entity base. Yeah, I guess it is nice. Or maybe base entity. I'm really bad with namings. Yeah, it is fine. It generated this base entity for me. Let's go to the author and let's inherit from my base entity. Let's go to the members. Let's remove it and inherit from the base entity. Another thing that I want to change here is create a folder and call it common and move this base entity to common folder. It is asking me, are you going to change the location? I'm going to say yes. And it is going to ask me, are you going to adjust the namespace? Then yes. As you can see here, if I go to the base entity now is placed in librarian domain common. Librarian domain and then common. And in all places that I used it, now there is a using to the common folder. This is another mistake that I made. That was unintentionally. The spelling of author should be like that. Using Ctrl R, you can rename it and it is going to reflect the file itself as well. Let me go back to the books. Let's change it and we need to have public int author ID as well here, and it should have a getter and setter. Okay, now that I created everything that I wanted, it is time to make the code better or refactor the code. You may think that we don't have anything to refactor because we just created that, but I want to get rid of almost all the warnings that I will receive. Then I need to I need to instantiate some of these items, something like that, because the default value for a string is null and we don't want it to be null. We are going to assign a value to it on instantiation. And how it is going to work. The most important thing, the golden rule that we have in clean architecture is about referencing the projects. The application should have a reference to the domain. Let's do it and let's be sure that we have it here. Domain should not be dependent to anything. As you can see here, there is no dependency here registered for the domain, and infrastructure and API should be dependent on application. Let's do it. Application. And again, application. Good. And here, again, application. Now the project structure for our project is ready. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how to create features, and I'm going to explain what are features in clean architecture. Then do not miss my next video. If you like this video, hit the like button and please subscribe to my channel. And do not forget to hit the bell. By hitting the bell, you will get notified when I upload my new video. Enjoy your life as a developer and do not forget to practice.